In 1945, a 19-year-old Soviet sniper was dying in a field hospital in East Prussia. She had 54 confirmed kills. The Germans called her the unseen terror of East Prussia. She had kept a diary throughout the war. Her commanding officers tried to have it destroyed. They failed. What she wrote in it is why they tried. Rosa Shanina was born in 1924 in a small village called Edma in the Arkhangelsk region of northern Russia. If you have never heard of Edma, that is because there is almost nothing to hear. A handful of houses in the taiga, a collective farm, a school, the kind of place that produces people who are either completely ordinary or completely extraordinary because there is nothing in between. Her father was a collective farm worker. Her mother died when Rosa was young. She was the oldest of 5 children. She helped raise her siblings, walked 4 kilometers to school each way through the Arkhangelsk forest, and at the age of 14 made a decision that tells you everything you need to know about her. She decided she was going to leave, not run away, not escape. She applied to study at a kindergarten teaching college in Arkhangelsk City. She was accepted. She was 14 years old, and she had decided that the forest was not her future, and that was the end of the discussion. 7 years later, she would be the most feared sniper on the Eastern Front. June 22, 1941. Germany invades. Rosa Shanina is 16 years old and living in Arkhangelsk, training to be a kindergarten teacher. Her brother Mikhail volunteers immediately. He is killed in 1942. Rosa goes to the military recruitment office the day she hears he is dead. They send her home. Too young. She goes back. They send her home again. She applies to the Central Women's School of Sniper Training. She is accepted in 1943. She is 18 years old. The Germans had been retreating since Stalingrad. The Soviet advance was beginning. Someone was going to have to go first into East Prussia, the most fortified territory in the entire German defensive system. Rosa Shanina was going to volunteer for that too. Here is what makes Rosa Shanina different from every other story in this series. She kept a diary. Not a military log, not an official record, a personal diary, written in the margins of available paper, in field notebooks, on whatever she could find, throughout her time on the front. It is the only document of its kind from a Soviet frontline female sniper that has survived. And it survived despite the efforts of several people to make sure it did not. But we will get to that. The diary begins in 1944 when Shanina arrives at the front. It ends in January 1945 when she is too badly wounded to write. What is in it is not what Soviet military authorities wanted the world to read. It is not heroic. It is not propagandistic. It does not describe the glory of the Soviet advance or the righteousness of the cause. It describes what it actually felt like to be 19 years old and killing people every day in the forests of East Prussia. She writes about fear, about the cold, about watching her friends die, about the way the landscape of East Prussia looks in winter, flat and gray and endless, about the specific mechanics of her work, the waiting, the mathematics, the decision. And she writes about her commanding officers. This is the part that caused the problems. A note on the diary entries I am about to read. The diary was first published in Russian in 1965, 20 years after her death, in a heavily censored form. The full version was not published until 1994. I am reading from the full version. These are her words. She was 19 years old when she wrote them. October 1944. I have been at the front for 6 months. I have stopped counting the days because counting makes the time move backward. I count other things instead. I count the shots. Each one is a decision I made. I want to remember that it was always a decision. November 1944. Today, Sorokina was killed. She was 20. She was from Sverdlovsk. She had a photograph of her mother in her breast pocket, and it was ruined by the blood. I did not cry until I was alone. I am always alone when I cry now. I do not know if this is strength or damage. December 1944. Major Loganov said today in front of the entire unit that women snipers exist to prove a political point and that our kills do not count the same as men's kills in the final accounting. I asked him what accounting he was referring to. He did not answer me. I wrote down what he said. He saw me writing and told me to stop. I did not stop. January 1945. East Prussia. I do not understand how a place can be this cold and still have people fighting in it. I fired 3 times today. The 3rd time I was not certain. I still counted. Uncertainty is part of the accounting. That last entry, uncertainty is part of the accounting, was written 4 days before she was mortally wounded. She was 19 years old. Let me tell you what Rosa Shanina was doing while she was writing those diary entries. She arrived at the 3rd Belarusian Front in April 1944. She was assigned to the 184th Rifle Division. She was 18 years old. Within 3 months, she had accumulated enough confirmed kills to receive her first commendation. By the autumn of 1944, the Germans had a name for her. Die unsichtbare Schrecken, the unseen terror. This is not a name they gave to many Soviet snipers. This is a name you give to someone who has killed enough of your people in enough unexpected ways that her presence becomes a psychological weapon independent of her rifle. The Germans did not know her name. They knew her work. She was particularly known for what Soviet sniper doctrine called the independent hunt, operating alone, without support, choosing her own positions, selecting her own targets. This was the most dangerous way to work. It was also the most effective. Her confirmed kill count at the time of her death was 54. This number requires context. Soviet confirmation requirements for sniper kills were among the strictest of any military in the war. A kill required either a second witness or physical evidence. Many kills went unconfirmed not because they did not happen, but because the confirmation conditions could not be met in the chaos of the Eastern Front advance. 54 was the confirmed number. The actual number was almost certainly higher. In December 1944, she was recommended for the Hero of the Soviet Union, the highest military decoration in the USSR. The recommendation was submitted by her immediate commanding officer. It was blocked by Major Loganov, the same officer she had written about in her diary, the same officer who had said women's kills did not count the same as men's. The recommendation sat on his desk and did not move. Rosa Shanina did not receive the Hero of the Soviet Union during her lifetime. She received it in 1945. Posthumously. January 1945. The Soviet advance into East Prussia, the heart of the German defensive system. The most heavily fortified territory on the Eastern Front. Rosa Shanina is 19 years old. She has been at the front for 9 months. She has 54 confirmed kills. She has a diary that is making her commanding officers extremely uncomfortable. And she has just volunteered, again, because she always volunteers, for the forward assault units going into East Prussia first. On January 27, 1945, during fighting near the town of Ilmsdorf, a German artillery shell exploded near her position. She was hit by shrapnel. The wounds were severe. She was evacuated to a field hospital. She knew she was dying. She kept writing. January 27, 1945. I have been wounded. The doctor says it is serious. I do not feel serious. I feel cold and far away from everything. I want to write while I can still write. I am not afraid. I am 19 years old, and I am not afraid. And I think this means either that I am brave, or that I have been at the front long enough that fear has become something I do not notice anymore. I do not know which. She died on January 28, 1945. She was 19 years and 9 months old. The war in Europe ended 4 months later. After Rosa Shanina died, her commanding officers moved to have her diary destroyed. The official reason given was operational security. The diary contained information about unit positions and tactical details that could not be made public. This was partially true. It was not the real reason. The real reason is visible in the diary itself. The diary described, in the words of the person who had experienced it, what the Soviet military actually looked like from inside. It described officers who blocked promotions out of personal pettiness. It described women fighters being told their kills counted less than men's. It described the fear and the grief and the moral weight of the decisions that Soviet propaganda had been packaging as straightforward heroism. It described the truth. And the truth was inconvenient. The diary survived because Rosa Shanina had given copies of several entries to a Soviet war correspondent named Pyotr Molchanov, who was embedded with her unit. Molchanov kept his copies. When the official diary was ordered destroyed, he said nothing. After the war, he worked quietly to have the full text preserved. The censored version was published in 1965. The full version, including the entries about Loganov, about women's kills, about the moral complexity of the work, was published in 1994, 49 years after her death. Major Loganov's name appears in the 1994 version. It did not appear in the 1965 version. Here is what I keep thinking about. Rosa Shanina was 19 years old. She had grown up in a village with no electricity. She had walked 4 kilometers to school through a northern Russian forest. She had taught herself to leave, to study, to become something the village had not prepared her for. And when she got to the front, surrounded by death and cold and commanding officers who told her her work counted less, she did something that none of her commanders had the courage to do. She wrote it down, honestly, without propaganda, without the language the Soviet state wanted applied to what she was doing. She wrote what it actually felt like. I do not know if this is strength or damage. She was 19 years old. She was the most feared sniper on the Eastern Front, and she was honest about not knowing the difference between strength and damage. That is not the kind of soldier the Soviet Union was trying to produce. It is the only kind worth remembering. The diary is available in Russian. An English translation exists and is linked in the description. I strongly recommend it. Subscribe if you're new. Next in this series, Lydia Litviak, the Soviet fighter pilot who painted a white lily on her plane, shot down 12 German aircraft and was declared a traitor by the USSR after she died. That story is coming. And if anyone ever tries to tell you that the people who wrote down what actually happened are less important than the people who made it happen, tell them about Rosa Shanina. She was 19 years old. She wrote it down anyway.